Hey, what's going on, everyone? Today we have the Set 17 tier list update coming out. This is going to be for patch 17.1. Lots of different comps to try out there, and I'll also be updating this site every single day. But I got a couple of favorites here, and we're going to run down the entire list and kind of teach you everything you need to know about every single comp. So if you want a dissertation of the entire patch, this is going to be it. So in the S tier, I have Vex, Fast 9, and Leblanc and Karma. I think Rageblade is just incredibly good right now, and both these comps use Rageblade on their carry. Rageblade is just one of those items that's very good at the start of the set. Every set this happens, and these two units use it really, really well. But what I like about this set so far and this release is that there's a lot of different strategies you can use in terms of leveling. Like we got Fast 9 here, we got level 8 here, and we also have reroll in the next comp. So Shepherd Viktor, this can be either rerolled or Fast 9. Very strong stuff there. Plays more like a traditional AP unit. Space Groove Riven, if you have the emblem for it, Space Groove Riven, incredibly powerful. Mecha, very fun comp to play. Very high rolly because Mecha units count twice, but super rewarding if you get the right setup for it. Nova Marauders. Nova, I just love that trait so much. It gives you so many cool things. And then after that, we have Stargazer Xayah. It does depend on what Stargazer you get. We'll cover which ones are better and worse as we get into the comp guides. And then lastly, in the A tier, we have Rouge Reroll if you want to be that type of guy. I actually really like the Rogue trait right now. It's kind of like an interesting twist on an effect that you used to have to build an item for. Then in the B tier is still solid. Twisted Fate reroll, Primordial reroll, 7 Shepherd, Corki Riven, Misfortune reroll, Meeple Veigar, and Jhin Fast 9. All these are pretty solid too. And honestly, right now you can pretty much climb with anything because at the start of the set, there is a rank reset, so you typically will face weaker players unless you're playing an obscene amount of games. But in the C tier, this is like the only tier I kind of recommend not playing unless maybe 1 out of 100 games. But Leona, Teemo reroll, and Psionic E, a bunch of other comps belong here too, but I just didn't add them yet. They're just better versions of these comps. For example, Yi's much better in like just 2 Psionic. You don't really need the 4. And then Leona Teemo, this is playable. There are some situations for it, but I don't know why you would play this when other comps exist out there. I mean, I guess if you start the game with 10 Teemos, maybe that's a thing too. And then we have a lot of the hero augments out there, like Invader Z, Meepsie, Nasus. Like, these are all pretty good comps. I actually like a lot of the hero augments out there right now. But let's get on into explaining how to play each and every one of these comps and learn all the ins and outs of them at the start of the set. So we're going to be covering all the units that are involved, all the itemizations, some augments that are good for them, how to play them, and also just a lot of random tips along the way. So starting off with Vex Fast 9. So Fast 9 is always weird because you need to be able to get to 9 comfortably. So that means you likely have to win streak in the early game or get some sort of super econ augment at the start of the game. There are no encounters yet in TFT. They said they're going to be adding it in future patches, but I'm guessing Fast 9 is going to get even better in those cases because some of the encounters just give like a ton of econ. But this comp works well. There are 2 versions that I have, one with Graves, one with no Graves, because you kind of need to get Graves a little early to get all the upgrades for him if you want to build around him. But essentially all this comp needs is 3 items for Vex and also a secondary carry. So what I like doing with this is to get an item augment early on to help me win streak a bit. That way I can save some HP for level 9 and also have enough items for all my random units that I'm eventually going to be playing. But right now, one version we have here is going to be Vex as main carry, Fiora or Graves secondary, and then Nunu as your main tank. One thing to keep in mind with this set is that there aren't really many tanks in this set at 5 costs, so it's kind of hard to stabilize your board at level 9 by doing like a true Fast 9. So oftentimes you're going to be playing for level 8, stabilizing there until you get 2-star tank, and then going up to level 9 after that. So I'd say that's like the one big difference in this set and the previous sets. I will be doing a leveling guide later on to fully cover this, but these 4 people are going to be the main champions you're going to be using for this comp. If you do not have Graves, you could use something like Bard instead, but pretty much this is just buy all the legendaries and try to fit in complementary traits with them. But for Vex, Rageblade going to be mandatory. The other 2 items, they don't matter as much. Fiora, she just likes a standard Titans, Derek's Bloodthirster combo. Graves can use a bunch of random stuff. He likes damage the most, so going a little more damage heavy on him is preferred, and then Nunu just like any tank items will do. But I found that Vow works on him incredibly well. But for the full game plan, stage 1 and 2, play your strongest opener, look to win streak. If you can't win streak, you probably have to switch to a different comp. Stage 3 is kind of the same thing. You can consider pivoting to Leblanc if you have already made Vex items but can't keep up the win streak. And then on stage 4, You really want to try to go level 9 on stage 4-5 instead of stage 5 because, again, you just really need a 4-cost 2-star tank. After that, it kind of plays out the same as old Fast 9, but that's kind of the changes we're going to have there. For Graves, his build path is going to be Assault Frame, better than Melt Through, better than Grab Booster, better than Buckshot. CC immunity is also really important on Graves. And again, you could flex this comp with Leblanc depending on how your win streak is going. Also, you do not need Shred and Sunder or Spell Crit in this comp because you get that from Nova, which is an incredibly good trait right now. It essentially saves you 2 items, sometimes 3, actually sometimes 4. So that's kind of why you don't see that in the itemization here. But overall, very strong comp. This is just Rageblade, Cheese, and then next comp up we have is Vanguard, Karma, and LeBlanc. This comp is a pretty good flex comp because you don't necessarily need to play Vanguards. You could kind of just use any sort of frontline, and there are many different variations of this comp, but I think the best way to play this comp is to use either an AP or attack speed generating Arbiter. After that, the other requirements is just Guinsoo's and 2 sets of carry items for your team. And again, like frontline is very flexible. Don't worry too much about that. But in the comp right now, we have the 4 Vanguards. Let's click into the team planner here. Nunu going to be the main one. Again, I'm really liking Protector's Vow just because he has good CC on his ability. He does like a knockup and stuff. So that's kind of why this item's really good on him. In the backline, I like the scaling LeBlanc, Archangel's Rageblade, Hextech Gunblade. And then for Karma, the crit build works out pretty well. Again, in case you are new to TFT or you're coming back from like a different set, normally when you build ability power carries, you want Jeweled Gauntlet, a mana regeneration item, and then third item can be kind of anything. So in the past, Nashor's Tooth wasn't really considered a mana item, but they changed it so that it is now. So attacks grant 2 bonus mana, and it's increased to 4 if they critically strike. So if you have the Jeweled Gauntlet, Nashor's Tooth kind of replaces Blue Buff or Shojin. It's not that you can't build them, it's just that Nashor's Tooth gives a bunch of other stats which are pretty nice. And then third item, again, doesn't matter. Void Staff's pretty good because you do need that effect in this team comp, just because you are going AP damage. But yeah, this is pretty much what it looks like. For augments, I really like getting Spell Crit in this build. They call it Precision now, but pretty much any comp that runs multiple carries really likes that augment. Fast 8 augments are also really good in this, as you can imagine, because you are playing around like so many different forecasts. Those are things that give passive XP, item augments, things like that. But overall, you are pretty much just abusing Rageblade, and it can be flexed with the other S-tier comp in Vex. Another secondary carry you could use is Nami instead of Karma. Nami is going to be played in like a 5 Shepherd 4 Vanguard build. Everything else is pretty much the same. You just swap out a couple of the units. Itemization on Nami is a little bit different as well. But the best part about this comp is that it can be played from almost any spot as long as you have Guinsoo's. So stage 1, play strongest board, try to win streak to play the Vex comp. If not, if you lose, it's fine. You just play this one instead. And then on stage 4-2, you just want to all in for LeBlanc, Karma, and all the other forecasts. And then once you 2-star everything, go level 9 and then play around some legendaries. Another thing you need to keep in mind is that you need to plan out your Arbiter. So it will affect your build for the comp. And this really matters for the early and mid game because a lot of times in the early mid game, you don't have all your items yet. So you don't get all the stats that you need. So if you have like a attack speed Arbiter, Archangels is going to be more important than Rageblade. And again, this is important because you do not have 3 items yet in the early game. Another thing you need to do is prioritize LeBlanc's items before Karma or Nami's because Karma and Nami cannot primary carry because they mainly just do AoE damage and struggle to finish people off. Another thing to keep in mind is that the core of the board is 3 Shepherd with LeBlanc and a secondary carry with 2 Arbiter, and then the front line can either be like 5 cost or Mecha or a bunch of other different options too. 4 Vanguard is typically the most played though because it's just the easiest one to get. And then lastly, you can also play 3 Arbiter, going to be a pretty nice thing to do as well, but that's going to be this comp. Another thing to keep in mind is that some of the good gods for this are Kale and Ari. I forgot to cover that in the previous one. They're pretty much good for both of them. It doesn't mean you have to take it. It's just going to be valued slightly higher. Keep in mind with the gods, like if you need the item component, you need the item component that they offer. You know, you can't really choose that sometimes. But my tip for gods is pretty much always take the god that helps your board most in the immediate state. But going on into our next comp, we have a Shepherd Viktor. This one can either be rerolled or used to fast 9 with. And pretty much uplink drone, if you get this, it makes the comp S tier. Bronze for Life also is S tier because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different traits that we can use. So obviously Ross is a really good thing to play as well, but Bronze for Life makes it even better. But another thing that's good with this comp is going to be item augments, just because you have a bunch of people to carry. But it also does depend whether you are fast 9ing or doing like the 3-cost focus reroll. But pretty much this comp serves 2 purposes. It's either an engine to reach fast 9, or you just use it to reroll with and try to win out if you get uplink drone. In case you didn't know, uplink drone, it repeats the damage on the holder's attacks and abilities to the same target every 3 seconds. And when your main guy is doing a lot of DPS, it's going to be really, really good. So compared to all the other Psionic items, it's just a lot better. We could actually check that out right now. But yeah, as you can see here, uplink drone is both the most played and the highest average placement out of all the Psionic items. So yeah, that's really how much better it is than everything else. But pretty much in stage 1 and 2, play an AP opener, check the Psionic items, of course. And then if you have drone, like, you can just hard force this comp. If you don't, you can flex this comp and go into level 9 and just use it as a tool. But another thing to note is that you could slam pretty much any AP item, because you don't have to put all the AP items on Viktor. Nami can pretty much use anything. So while you're tailoring like the Archangels and Jeweled Gauntlet for Viktor, like any random AP can always go on Nami. By the time you reach stage 3, you'll know whether you can go fast 9 or not. So that's the main decision point you have to make there. And then on stage 4, if you are rerolling, stay level 7. If not, roll on stage 4 2 at level 8 for a similar board, and then try to make it to 9 if you can. And if you ever get Bronze for Life, you just like pretty much auto win the game. It's just so insane with this comp that if you ever get it, just like super hard force this. Other tips is having a 3-item Nami and Viktor is an easy way to go 9, but also makes it easy to pivot into Bard. You need to pay attention to your Psionic items, and don't be afraid to give up on winning the game and just try to top 4 if the situation calls for it. So always keep that in mind. And also, like, Viktor's best itemization is pure damage. We could check that out in the Explore tool right here. You just type in Viktor, and then you look at his items, and then you see that mana regen, while still like playable, it's much worse than just going full damage. Like we see Jeweled Gauntlet 3.55, Archangel 3.44. You're always going to want to use uplink. But then we see some of the mana regen items, it's just like 3.8, 4.0. Not ideal, you know? You don't need the mana item on Viktor. Pure damage is just much, much better. So I get that if you just look at other tier lists or random guides, like they might just show the items to play, but they don't really go into the why and how things differ from like regular builds. Because you look at Viktor, you might think normally like, oh, just build the typical like blue buff, Jeweled Gauntlet, Void Staff type of build. But no, it's a lot different for Viktor. Just because of the way like Conduit works, it gives him just enough mana regen to kind of still play out his game. So that's pretty much how this comp works. Lots of different options there. Like actually, unironically, like a bunch of different decision points for a reroll comp. But it's mainly just because Viktor's OP. Whenever I see these comps that are like, oh, it can reroll or fast 9, it's just because the comp's like kind of OP at the start of the set. So if I had to guess, they probably will nerf some of these comps in the near future. But next comp up we have is Space Groove. Only played this with the Space Groove emblem for Riven. It's just absolutely bonkers busted on her. Pretty much whenever they cast their spell, they enter the groove. And Riven casts pretty often, so she's pretty much always in the groove, and the healing and stacking AD and AP she gets is just absolutely incredible. The good news in this set is that finding spatulas and emblems aren't too difficult. Like obviously it doesn't happen every game, but it is very possible to get this a lot of times. So if you're really feeling it, you can always just build like the melee items and kind of pray that you get her. But pretty much the core of the comp is going to be 5 Space Groove. And then Nunu's just like a very solid unit to play in pretty much everything, just because of his AoE CC. But the thing about Space Groove is that they have like 2 really good tank traits. They have Bastion and Blitzcrank. So Blitzcrank is really good because he's a Vanguard, and that pairs up with Nunu really well, so you have a 4 and 5 cost. And then Ornn is good because you can pair up with Shen. And when you have Shen, you get Shen's Sword, which buffs a bunch of units. And when you're focusing power on one of them, it's just another really good power up you can have for Riven. So that's pretty much how this comp works. Riven also gets Rogue with Gwen, who's also a Space Groove, but you pretty much just like need the emblem to kind of make this work out really well. So that's why in the augment section, I pretty much have like a bunch of emblem stuff here, because it is that important. I wouldn't really play this comp without it. You are free to try it. Let me know how it goes. But you could see here with their item stats, this is teamfight.lol, by the way. This Space Groove thing really makes her a lot better than pretty much any other item out there. But the good news about this comp is because it's a level 8 comp, winning and lose streaking doesn't matter as much. Like obviously you still want to do one or the other, But as long as you have the emblem, you can play it. You don't really need to sacrifice your whole early game to kind of plan for this board. But pretty much if by stage 3-2 you don't have a spatula yet, it's going to be kind of risky to play this comp. By the way, Space Groove emblem builds from spatula and tier. But if you do, roll on stage 4-2 for Riven 2, Nami 2, and 2-star frontliner, same as you would for all the other level 8 comps. And then if you find Blitz, great. You pretty much are in an incredible spot. If not, you just have Nasus there. And then you can play something like 7 Space Groove for a while before you find the rest of the team. But pretty much in the late game, you do not want Teemo and Nasus on your board. It's just not worth it compared to stuff like Shen. But pretty much never drop down to 3 Space Groove. The reason why is because 5 Space Groove gives the AP and AD, which is what Riven really likes. And then another thing to note is that Nunu, Tahm Kench, or Rammus can all be main tanked, but ideally it's Nunu. And you also do not need to build healing on Riven if you have Space Groove +1, because it already provides a bit of healing. What you want to do instead is prioritize survivability and CC immunity, and that's exactly what items like Titan's Resolve does. But let's go on into the next comp. It's going to be the 6 Mecha comp. Pretty much the way Mecha works is you use your little Mecha consumable, drop it on the mech units, and they take up an extra slot and also transform into a better version of themselves. So I guess you could call it like looks maxing or TFT maxing, whatever you want to do. But pretty much it's just an ASOL plus Mighty Mech comp. Sometimes I call Mighty Mech Galio. So if you ever hear me say Galio, it's referring to the Mighty Mech because they kind of look alike. But pretty much when you have 6 Mecha activated, you get an extra unit slot. So it's pretty easy to fit in all the units. So you have 2, 4, 6 units there, and then 1, 2, 3, so that's 9 slots, but you can fit it in at level 8 if you have 6 Mecha activated. And the comp's really strong. It's just a bit hit or miss because you either get the 2-star mechs or you don't, and getting a 2-star mechs is like a 2-for-1 deal. And you also need stuff like best in slot items. That makes them really, really powerful. But yeah, it makes the comp really, really risky though, because you are going all in on 2 units. All the other units pretty much don't matter, but if you have good econ, and somehow also magically have best in slot items, this comp is really, really good because a good econ pretty much guarantees being able to hit ASOL and Mighty Mech 2. And another thing to note is that when you are concentrating your power on 2 units, Radiant and Artifact items are really, really powerful on them. But pretty much in stage 1, you want to collect the mech best in slot items, start building them. Stage 2, try to save some HP. Ideally, you get like Radiant Relics or whatever. They renamed that augment. I forget what it's called now. It's the one where you like flip a coin. Alternatively, you can get stuff like artifacts. And then on stage 4, level 8, 4-2, or 4-1, roll for the mechs and pretty much pray that you hit. Also, another thing you can do with this comp is also play Tahm Kench and start getting rewards with him. But you only do that if you are high HP, but it is something to consider. But other things to keep in mind is that Aurelion Soul in Mecha form does not auto-attack, so auto-attacking items like Shojin and Nashers are completely worthless. Echo's offerings are good to lose streak with, and his boon also works really well in Aurelion Soul. And then Yasuo's hexes are absolutely incredible for this comp because when you only care about a couple of units, you want to power them up as much as possible, and that's exactly what hexes do. Like, I'd say even if they're bad hexes, you would take them, but pretty much each item on them is worth double. So like, you know how I say stuff like 3 items equals 3 items? In this comp, like 6 items equals 6 items. So a Radiant item is worth 2 items essentially. And if you put it on like Aurelion Soul in Mecha form, it's essentially worth like 4 items. So you have 4 plus 2 plus 2. You could potentially have like 8 items on one character, which is absolutely bonkers busted. Don't ask me on how the math works out, it just does. Another thing to keep in mind is if you're contested, Tahm Kench is good to print copies with, but eventually you do want to play stuff like Akali and Maokai as they're just better at supporting your team compared to everything else. But yeah, that's pretty much how you play this. Very strong comp. Like, another thing to note is that like Gargoyles is super OP in this because like he is going to be your solo tank, and with his boosted stats, it's just really, really good. I guess that's another reason why you could call him Galio, because Galio is like a gargoyle, but overall like super duper fun comp to kind of play around with. Next up we have is Nova Marauders. This one is a 5 Nova 4 Marauder comp built around Master Yi and Fiora, but you could also itemize stuff like Kindred, and Tahm Kench is going to be your tank here. Keep in mind you do need an emblem when you play this comp. Nova emblem is like for sure 100% required, and this is pretty dependent on having best in slots. Like Edge and Knight Yi versus no Edge and Knight, pretty big difference I'd say. And another thing is that you also need to reach level 9 somehow. So pretty much this comp is A tier with emblem, B tier without it. And without Fiora, it's very hard to win. So there's a lot of requirements for this comp. It does work out really well if you do get all the pieces to line up. I wouldn't call it Exodia though. So like even if you get all the pieces, it's not like a free win or anything. It's just like you have a very nice game. But it is like a very solid option to play with if you get some of the melee items working for you early game. But you can also like build around Rageblade on Kindred, though obviously like Master Yi is going to be the primary carry of this comp. But pretty much in stage 1 and 2, you play your strongest board. Talon's going to be a great opener to play around. Having HP is pretty important in this comp because you do need to reach level 9 eventually. It can't be like one of those fast 8 comps where you can sometimes choose between going for top 4 or try to win the game. This one, you pretty much need Fiora to even like get top 4 because you can't really give up on her. But if you find the Nova emblem by stage 3-2 in the augment selection round, you can just commit to the comp. Otherwise, keep your options open for AD variants like Xayah or Corki. In the super late game, you can play around things such as Graves. You just have to change the comp out a bit. I will be adding comp variants in the next couple of days, so definitely look out for that if you are looking for alternatives whenever you play some of these comps. But yeah, pretty much that's how the comp works. Lots of conditions. You need to meet most of them. And pretty much if you don't have the emblem, don't play it. Another thing to note is that Edge and Knight is required, and also Giant Slayer is really good because you're a lot of single target damage. So if you ever get stuck on a tank, it's just really, really bad to do. So that's why you need Giant Slayer in this comp. Also, you don't need any of the random effects because Nova provides that for you. Next comp up we have is the Stargazer Xayah build. So this is going to be one of the AD comps that we're going to cover. It's built around snipers, and pretty much it's like Xayah, Rammus going to be your 2 main guys, and then late game going to be Jhin or Bard. The best time to play this comp is if you have a tempo AD opener, or if you get the Serpent, Boar, or Altar Stargazer constellation. Pretty much if you are new to the set Stargazer, it's that trait where it's different every single game, so you get a different constellation every game. So you just have to check it at the start. If you get one of these, the comp becomes a little bit better. You can't really play it with any of the other ones, so you absolutely have to be sure on what you get before you commit to this. But I know what everyone's asking. What is a strong AD opener? Pretty much if you have Krakens or Gwinsu with some type of item holder, we have them down here, this comp can be used. I will note that this comp does suck from being played from a loss streak, so you got to be a little careful there. In stage 3, you want to stay strong and keep trying to build best in slot Xayah. You need a lot of bows, so that's a little bit of a tricky situation to navigate. On the god selection, I would recommend just like going for bows over like the perfect god or whatever. But luckily, if your items are not what you want, you can try to hold Meeples and try to pivot into Corki. Stage 4, you just do the regular fast 8 stuff. Xayah, Rammus, Nunu, those are going to be good stuff. The tank line is a bit flexible, and then after that, go level 9, play legendaries, and try to cap out there. That's pretty much how you play this. It's just standard fast 8, AD carry with attack speed items. Item augments are pretty good in this since you're itemizing so many people, but there are honestly a lot of different ways to play this comp. You just need one of these constellations out there. Rouge Reroll is a fun comp. You know me, I like my 3-cost reroll. If you ever get one of the really good reroll augments such as like Prismatic Ticket, Calculated Loss, pretty much anything that gives free rerolls, this is the comp to kind of play around. So another thing, I've been talking a lot about all the other comps out there, and I'm like, oh, you need to be strong early. Oh, you need to win streak. This comp can be played from both win or lose streak, which gives this comp more options and also gives you a lose streak option, which is desperately needed in this set. So the only things you really need to pay attention to is getting best in slot Fizz and enough money to 3-star everything, because like Kai'Sa, Fizz, Ornn, and Rost, all very important stuff because 3 of them are your item holders, and then one of them is like Rost 3 just gives a bigger bonus on his Redeemer trait, which is pretty solid in this comp. But stage 1 and 2, if you get Talon 2-star and 2 Rogue, you can try to win streak. If not, you just lose streak. Next, level up to level 7 on stage 3-5, and if necessary, stabilize. Stabilize is getting 2-star damage dealer, 2-star tank, or whoever has your items just 2-star them. And also try to focus on getting Nashor's Jeweled Gauntlet for your Fizz. On stage 4, do a slow roll and keep rolling down to 50 for your board. And if you do get to low life, you need to roll aggressively to get Riven and Rammus 1-star. And then when you do have a lot of copies of some of your 3-star units, consider all-inning. All-inning in this comp is a little bit risky because you do want to 3-star everything. So if you do it too early, you might get 1 or 2 of them, but then you'll definitely miss out on the others. So just be careful when you do it. I'm not saying never all in early. It's just that you probably only want to do it if you are truly desperate and super low life. But items for this comp, Fizz super important. Nashor's JG Handed Justice makes a lot of sense. It's just like a crit build. Ornn, utility items and tank items are good on him. Kai'Sa, I like the Shojin IE Guardbreaker build. Kai'Sa's a little more flexible, but yeah, just focus on the Fizz, get him up and running. And another thing is that you always want to play 3 Meeple. It makes Fizz's third cast do a lot more damage. Poppy can be a replacement for Rammus, as they have the same traits before you get him. Nashor's Tooth is Nashor's Tooth, and then Ross is like very good if he's uncontested to go for 3-star with, because again, like 3-star Redeemer is just so good. That's why I really like Prismatic Ticket in this comp, because it just gives you so many rerolls to actually like 3-star everything. Next up we have are the B tiers. We have Twisted Fate reroll. This is with him and Jax. But I do want to note that if you ever get Medallion Stargazer constellation, this comp becomes S tier. Very simple 1-cost reroll build. You can check out the leveling patterns here on the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. But one helpful thing in this comp is going for item augments, because you are 3-starring a lot of different things here. You can do pretty much everything. But pretty much the reason why you want to 3-star everything is because the Medallion Stargazer just gets a benefit based on all the star levels you have and the 3 stars you have. So that's kind of why you want everything upgraded. So super fun comp to play. You do need to be a little lucky with this, even if you do have the Medallion Stargazer thing, because you still need to actually like hit the comp. But 1-cost reroll is pretty easy to hit. So all you want is like 4 or more natural copies of Twisted Fate. And then because TF farms money, he'll help you hit everything else. So TF is pretty much the only unit that matters early. It's actually like a pretty well-designed team comp in my opinion from Riot. But pretty much hold Twisted Fate, Caitlyn, Talon, Jax, and Aatrox. Roll on stage 3-1 to try to get Twisted Fate 3. If you don't get him, roll down to 32 gold, econ back up, and slow roll for him. And then once you get him, all the other units should fall into place eventually. And then you do an all-in on stage 4-1. Then when you get to level 7, this is probably going to happen like late stage 4 or early stage 5. You can add in something like Ross, but honestly, Jax 3-star is better than going for Ross in a lot of cases. For item priorities, Twisted Fate, Jax, Talon, Caitlyn, Gwen, it's going to be in that order. You don't need Shred or Sunder because you have the Nova buff. All-inning for Twisted Fate 3 earlier than normal oftentimes is a good idea because he pays himself off. And then you do want to prioritize getting Jax 3-star at level 6 over going level 7. Next build up we have is going to be the Primordian reroll. This one's a 1 and 2 cost reroll comp based around all the Primordian units. It's pretty much like the reroll trait of the set. I'd recommend only playing this if you get early 3 Primordian. Also, having Titans or QSS on Bel'Veth is absolutely mandatory because you need her to never get interrupted when auto-attacking. So those are going to be the 2 kind of conditions for this comp. You also want to 3-star as many things as possible because Primordians scale heavily from 3 stars. And essentially how this comp works is that Bel'Veth does the consistent DPS and then Akali provides the burst. And then you also have Rek'Sai as your main tank. This comp also works out pretty well with Nova. Nova just gives all the special effects that you really need. So it allows you to build in a bunch of goofy ways, simply because you don't need to waste item slots on Even Shroud or Infinity Edge and things like that. So pretty much what you want is just like get some reroll augments in this comp, and it is pretty easy to kind of hit everything. You do want to do 2-cost reroll. Your focus on Akali and Bel'Veth. You will hit the 3-star 1-cost eventually, even though you are doing 2-cost reroll. So don't worry too much about that. But pretty much if you don't have 3 Primordian in by stage 2-3, consider pivoting into a different line because Primordians just give you free units. So if you can't get that, it's going to be much harder to play. But try to stabilize on level 6 on stage 3-2 for an upgraded board. And then playing around Bel'Veth and Akali 2-star should be pretty easy. It's not that difficult to hit them 2-star at this point in the game, assuming you had a copy of them in stage 2. And then after that, you just keep rolling for 3 stars for the rest of the game. In like stage 5, you can get like 5 Nova in. You don't need to do it early, but eventually it will be good for the late game. And it makes Akali a ton better, so just keep that in mind. But next comp up we have is 7 Shepherd. This is one of those vertical comps that's pretty fun to play. You play around Sona and LeBlanc carry. If you get Shepherd emblem, it's really good because if not, it's really hard to get to 7. Also, you have to play some of the garbage Shepherd units if you do not have the emblem. But yeah, it's pretty emblem dependent, and you also need Gwynsu's on LeBlanc, and I would ask you why you are playing this instead of the other LeBlanc version, but I guess if you do get the emblem, then it's perfectly fine to play. Next comp up we have is Corki Riven. We're getting to the point in the B tiers where they're just better versions of different comps. Like Xayah, I think is just better AD user than Corki. This is something that you pivot into if you can't get the Xayah thing going. And also Riven just has better builds with the Space Groove if you get that emblem. But if you're forced to pivot into Corki, this is kind of what the build would look like. 5 Meeple, 4 Bastion. It's like not as bad as I'm making it sound. Like it's still pretty solid, but I just think there are better things to play. But it's just typical fast 8 nonsense. You have 3 different 4 costs to play around. 1 main damage dealer, 1 tank, 1 melee damage dealer, and then you are able to cap out with legendaries in Bard and Shen. So if you really like standard TFT, this is one of the best comps to play because it just plays very linearly and it has a lot of familiarity for people who have played a lot in the past. Next build up we have is Misfortune Reroll. This one is a good comp because you could combine like Viktor, Misfortune, and Rost all together. And she also has different builds, Conduit and Replicator. I personally would just focus on Viktor and play the Viktor comp if I were in your shoes, but if you get like tons of copies of Misfortune, this definitely is something to consider if you are going for Viktor already, especially if you get a reroll augment in your game. As per usual, like the uplink drone Psionic item bumps this up a tier, just because it's just by far the best one in the game right now. Next build up we have is Meeple Veigar. Very fun build to play. I recommend having 4 copies of Veigar though, but you essentially just print out copies of Veigar to get him to 3-star, and then you just play normally. So you pretty much get like the equivalent of a 2-star 4 cost pretty much for free. I think like 3-star 1 cost is like slightly better than 2-star 4 cost in terms of absolute power, but like because you're pretty much getting it for free, it makes this build work out pretty decently. Ram is solid tank out there. You have late game options in like Bard. You can also play Jhin in this because you do run snipers in this build, but pretty much you just get to 7 Meeples with as much HP as possible, use the cloning thing to get Veigars, and then drop down to 5 Meeples, play some legendaries. It's a pretty solid comp and also decently easy to play around with. Next build up we have is Jhin Fast 9. They're just better Fast 9s out there, but if you have AD items, this is something to play around. Also, we don't get to choose which level 9 characters we get to play with. I will say that while Jhin can use Rageblade, because a lot of the level 9 comps use Rageblade, it's not the best item on him. We could check out the stats on this. Just type in Jhin in the Explorer tool on teamfight.lol. Go to items, and then you'll see that Rageblade is built a lot, but it's because people just build Rageblade and then they're like, oh crap, I don't have a Rageblade user, let me just drop it on him. It's not like one of his best items. Like IE and just like raw AD is going to be a bit better on him, but it's not that Rageblade's bad, it's just that there are better things to kind of build on him. Actually, it's pretty bad. I'm looking at this like, wow, it's like pretty much one of his worst items. But the reason why people build it is because they built it early game, they're trying to go for something else, and then they're like, oh crap, did not get Vex, so what am I supposed to do? For some reason, they forgot that they could pivot over on into Leblanc, or maybe they got a ton of attack damage items, so they're like, all right, fine, let me go Jhin, let me put the Rageblade on him, and that's that. But yeah, buy all the legendary units, play them. It's still good, they're just like better things to play out there right now. But yeah, just to sum up at the top, like right now, I think it's like a pretty decent meta for like a start a set, to be honest. Like we got a lot of different options to play, like bunch of reroll options, a lot of situational B tiers that can be S tier. I like that a lot. That means like you don't play the comp every single game, but if you do get the right spot for it and you recognize it, then you get rewarded. That's kind of what I like about TFT sometimes. You know, it's like knowing how all the puzzle pieces fit together. But pretty much focus on the Rageblade comps up here with Vex and Leblanc. Those are going to be your bread and butters. If you get emblem checked, like Riven is absolutely incredible. What's some of the other ones? I think like the Nova comp was really good. So there are a lot of different things to play. If you want to reroll, there's like a Rogue reroll, Viktor reroll. Some of the B tier rerolls can be S tier if you meet the requirements for them. So overall, like I think there's a lot of good stuff to play. I'm going to be covering the hero augments in a separate video, so subscribe for that if you have not already. And if you want to reference this page, it is a free site on my website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where you can like take a look at like pretty much every paragraph we have written about every single comp. There's pretty much nothing more detailed out there, but that's all going to be on the website. As for videos in the upcoming future, I'm going to be doing a Gods guide, an artifact guide, and also a leveling guide, so definitely keep a lookout for that. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this, and I'll see you all in the next video.